This is a Zerg versus Protoss I just played. See, I spawn down here in the bottom right. My opponent spawns up here in the top left. I do a what's called a macro build in this game, which means I'm going to just get an early expansion and try to play for a little bit later in the game. Not do anything super early to attack my opponent. My opponent puts their first pylon out here, which normally signifies they're going to take the main base. I don't have this information yet because I just have only sent my first unit out on the map to Overlord that you start the game with a Zerg. I do a really normal thing for a Zerg player to do here, which is to, make an Overlord and a few more drones, and then after that, take an expansion. I actually see this probe on the way down with my drone. He's going to go for the block, but because I take my expansion actually one supply later, he thinks I'm not doing it, so he actually comes up here, doesn't click and follow my drone back, and see I take the expansion. So it actually worked out really well for me. So then I make a gas geyser and spawning pool. This is just to make Zerglings in their speed upgrade. Your first attacking unit is Zerg, lets you stay safe against most things that aren't super aggressive cheese. If there's going to be one, I would already see my opponent's pylons going up in my base. So Protoss have these structures pylons that they use to power all of their structures. So you can only put your other structures in a power field generated by this. I guess I can't see this even with my opponent's view here, but it's a field about this size, and your building has to be touching at least, I think, one hex. There's a build grid you can see when you're playing the game that you don't get in the replay. Oh, it's got the annoying diva announcer too. Awesome. So I just cut my drone following this probe because I saw it was very early. So I want to see if it's putting up a pylon near me, because Protoss do eventually get this ability called Warp Gate, where they can use their gateways to warp in units that you can make out of them at the pylon, in a pylon's power field, or in their flying transport. The warp prism can also turn into a power source, but it becomes stationary when you do so. That can also be used to warp in units. My opponent's not. My opponent's just being very safe, getting a gateway, getting a forge even, which lets you build cannons to play defensively. You can also cannon rush if you get your forge first, but my opponent did not do that this game. I get up here with this Overlord and see what's going on and decide that I can take another base really fast once I see this. So I get here, I actually click on the building here, the cybernetics core, so I know what this is. And I know this means my opponent expanded before getting this building, because otherwise it would have been done already. So I'm under no real threat of getting attacked anytime very soon, because my opponent doesn't have warp gate research, which this building lets you make. And it's got one zealot hold, I assume, on hold position on the wall at the front here, so my units can't get by. I decide, okay, fine, I want to play a longer macro game anyway. I'm going to take another base, stay a base ahead of Zerg, which is what I want to do anyhow. I do manage to get my Overlord in here and see gateways in a minute. I go over here, I see what this building was. It was still constructing last time I had seen. I see, okay, it's a cannon, which I assumed it probably was because I'd seen the forge. But I just actually scout and follow up and check on that. So I get in here, I see, oh, hey, there's some gateways building. I think I only clicked on these two gateways and not the not the Stargate, but since it finishes under my Overlord, I do end up seeing it. So you can actually tell what unit they're building in it if you look really closely. I'm not actually very good at it. I know there's a way to do it though. I just see, okay, it's a Stargate, but since it pops out right here, a Phoenix, this is just a flying unit, only does air-to-air. So they use it to clear out the Overlord, so I have less of a clue what's going on their side of the map. But if they're building Phoenixes, it means they're not building other things out of the Stargate that can actually do harassment damage to me. So my other base over here is finished up. I had made a Roach Warren just in case there was an attack coming. I probably actually should have canceled that once I saw the Phoenix, because I don't think I'm going... Well, no, there's a chance in the later game, if my opponent gets sentries, I will want the Ravagers that morph off the Roach. So it's probably fine. It doesn't cost that much resources. I'm making a whole bunch of drones anyway, because the plan is to play a longer game. I've got the Zerglings over here just waiting. These should really be out across the map someplace. 4 Zerglings isn't going to defend against very much. So they might as well be out on useful places on the map, like maybe one holding this watchtower, one holding this watchtower to give some vision. Probably put one at each of my next opponent's next likely bases, although I do have an overlord here that does spot this base, and I think I end up just clicking my Zerglings over here and not even looking at them again at some point. So I've made some queens. I actually made an extra queen from this one, had her spread a couple of creep tumors, then walked her over here. I got the layer so that I can get the next set of units, the Hydralisk. Hydralisks with Zerglings and Banelings are a really good style against Protoss right now. They just do very well against most of the standard compositions. So my opponent's coming in here with these the Phoenixes we saw earlier. They have this lift ability that you can lift up ground units with one of them and then the other ones fire at it. You can use it to clear queens. I did make some spore crawlers at some of my bases to deal with this, as well as the one at my third base here is not actually done yet, so I end up losing my queen there. Not really the end of the world. Yeah, so I just right-clicked my Zerglings over here, and I guess they died. I don't know when I did that, but, sent them over there thinking maybe they'll go bother the base, and they obviously did not do very much. So see, you can see my opponent's warp gate resources finished now, so all his zealots here got warped in this pylon's power field. So you don't have to warp them into each individual building. You just have to have one pylon power field to be able to do that. There's 4 different gateway units. There's the zealots. There's actually more than I realized. So no, this is right. Zealots, sentries, stalkers, and adepts are all the more basic ones. You can have all of these ones once you make your cybernetics core. Then there's ones that require special tech up here at the next level. They're also from the gateways. So it's less often that you see those warped in earlier. There's one thing you can do with Dark Templar where they rush them, but that didn't happen this game. So my opponent's been doing a good job of being out on the map and keeping my overlords cleared up. I haven't even tried to put them back on the map because I know they'll just die to the Phoenixes if I try to do that. I'm making just upgrades for my units and trying to mass a big army before I engage. I don't have any interest in really fighting until I have substantial upgrades in a large army. That's the whole plan in this game. So the longer my opponent leaves me alone, it doesn't really bother me, the better it is for me. Ideally, I would have just some Zerglings around at some bases, because then even if he is flying the Phoenixes around like this, and probably holding both watchtowers too, then if they're going to take them out with the Phoenixes, you have to pick up the Zerglings, which costs a lot of energy to pick up a little wimpy Zergling. So my opponent does have some Dark Templar here with this attack now. I have this Overseer, which has detection. I screw up a little bit by targeting the Warp Prism there, but it ends up working out because my opponent tries to pick up the Dark Templar and then immediately gets shot down anyhow. So I've acquired this base now. These gold minerals provide more minerals per trip than the normal blue minerals that most bases have. You get 5 minerals per trip with a drone at a normal blue mineral base. You get 7 minerals per trip with a drone at a gold mineral base. There's one on my opponent's side of the map too. My opponent was actually over here in the early game checking out if I had expanded up here, because one of the more common strategies on this map is for Zergs to take this base very early and just really press that advantage. I don't do a good job of actually managing my resources here. So you'll see my opponent, wow, was splitting a lot of resources. I thought it was me for a second. I'm the one down here in the red. You'll see once this gold base kicks in, I start having a ton of minerals all the time. I float thousands of minerals for a lot of the game because what I need to do is make some more hatcheries to produce more larvae so I can actually spend that money. So I've gone, okay, well, it seems like my opponent's still not attacking me. I'm going to start getting the next set of tech. So I make an infestation pit, which lets me then make my layer here into a hive, which lets me unlock the highest tier units, unlock the highest tier upgrades. I think I start a spire here in a moment, which lets me make lets me make air units. So I do finally decide to go check out what my opponent's doing on the map. I've actually been waiting for my speed upgrade on the Banelings to finish up, the little explodey guys, because they're so slow until they get that upgrade. You can visually tell when they get it too because they start rolling instead of just waddling around. I could definitely spread this creep more. It's out there a little bit, but really by this point in the game, it could be out here or so. If I was doing it right, it could be halfway across the map, like, and starting to encroach on my opponent's side of the map if I was really more focused on it. But I get some defensive structures here just to prevent things like the drop if my opponent makes another warp prism. I got these spore crawlers are anti-air and they also detect things. So those invisible units the Dark Templar my opponent had earlier, this lets me see them. Then the spine crawler here is an anti-ground one. It does single target damage, high damage. So I have sent a bunch of my army across the map because I saw my opponent. I said, "Oh, are you taking the fourth base?" Yes. Well, sent my whole army there, killed the fourth base right after it finished. So my opponent got no use out of this, spent a bunch of minerals, got no return. I also engaged the army here. I don't actually look at this fight when it's going on. I'm busy macroing things in my base. So I didn't actually realize there was a disruptor. I bet some Hydralisks ate a hit from that. This is a unit that shoots a ball of energy that explodes after several seconds, making a large radius of damage. It does friendly fire, but Hydralisks are kind of slow to dodge it if you're not really paying attention. Zerglings can dodge it just fine. My opponent has these are all splash damage things, which are good against my army composition, but not in high enough numbers to actually work. So this Colossus has a sweeping area of attack. They're so large you can hit them with both anti-air attacks as well as your normal ground attacks. So I see this. I believe I already got the Spire earlier. Yeah, there it is. So I can make Corruptors for exactly this. I'm engaging this army without looking at it. So I think I even told these to rally over here when I first made them. Yes, I see now I just grabbed them to give them a new command. I think I move all my overseers out of here. I've been taking these around with my army so my opponent can't just make a whole bunch of Dark Templar and come and bother my army. And I wouldn't be able to see them, but except I have the overseers that let me see them. So my gold minerals here are starting to run out, but look how many minerals I have. So if I had more hatcheries, I could have so many Zerglings that wouldn't even matter what my opponent was doing. I could just send them all across the map, and that would be it. I think I still end up doing that, but I could have even more than I do. So these things eat Zerglings for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I have so much. This is a case of me just having so much more stuff than my opponent, thanks to having taken the gold base and repeatedly killed their attempts at the third base. That, well, I guess not repeatedly yet. I got their fourth base, got the third base earlier, trying to take this third now. I think once I defend this, I immediately counterattack and take out this new attempt at the third base as well, while also setting up my fifth base because I realize I'm actually out of minerals at my main base. I have 11 drones here mining one patch. 3 is the most that you can mine with that actually does anything. 2 does it efficiently. 3 oversaturates a tiny bit, but you are still getting more resources. 11, you have literally 8 drones standing around watching. I was also more consistent about hitting my Queen's Injects. If you ever see the hatchery and it doesn't have the little green balls on it, like that one, means I haven't had my Queen Inject to actually have enough larvae, which also is another reason my money is way too high. So yeah, I do immediately, once I deal with this counterattack, try to take out my opponent's base here. I have some of the Corruptors to deal with the Colossus, like I said. They also are cleaning up the last of the Phoenix from the early game. And now it's the point where I have 134 supply of units to my opponent's 60, and a lot of that for my opponent is going to be still in workers right now too. Well, that's not as much as I thought it was during the game, but that's fine. So now I just have so much stuff it just overruns the opponent.